Classic WoW, a game loved by many and a game that people asked for ages. You think you do, but you actually don't. The actual meme of the century, and trust me, we thought we did, and we actually did, and we still do. Classic WoW, based on all metrics, have been a really successful game so far, probably way more successful than Blizzard initially thought it was going to be, considering their blatant disregard for actually making it to begin with. But after a lot of pressure from the community, they decided to give it a go, and I'm sure they are very happy with that decision. Classic WoW Vanilla brought a lot of people together, from people playing it due to pure nostalgia, to people having wanted official Classic servers for years, to people that were sick of where retail was going, and it also launched at the perfect time, considering the current expansion during that time was BFA, or Battle for Azeroth, and a lot of people were getting sick of the so-called Azerite grind. Classic WoW was very popular when it came out, and it is still very popular to this day. A lot of people think it has lost a lot of players since the vanilla days, but looking at some metrics we can actually start reverse engineering this statement. Looking at Classic WoW's demographics provided by Ironforge.pro, which tracks the amount of players that are raiding, we can see that Classic WoW had a peak of 489,000 players raiding in 1 week, and the average seems to be just around 330,000 players raiding, with a somewhat steady downwards trend throughout the expansion, which does make sense due to people simply quitting over time due to various reasons. As TBC Classic came out, there were a lot of controversies surrounding the level 58 boost, which was introduced, as well as the TBC Classic Deluxe Edition, which gave people a mount which we had not seen before in the Classic WoW universe. It was basically Blizzard's way of making sure, or making a lot of money on the success of Classic WoW, as well as slowly turning it more and more into retail. Despite that, the amount of people logged through raids kept going up, and the peak amount of raiders during TBC Classic came in at 404,000 players, and the average amount of raiders throughout the expansion were sitting on just around 300,000, which is a slight 10% fall off since Classic Vanilla. Moving into Wrath of the Lich King, this expansion brought a lot of people back to the game who played in Classic Vanilla but skipped TBC, as well as a lot of newer players who had never played Classic before but wanted to play the Wrath expansion because it feels a little bit of a middle ground between Classic WoW and future expansions. It is an expansion where leveling up doesn't take you 1000 hours, buying a mount and riding skill does not cost you a leg and a kidney, and the PvP system was reworked so you wouldn't have to quit your job and divorce your wife in order to reach the highest rank. So far in Wrath, the current peak of raiding numbers is 626,000 in the middle of phase 1 of Wrath, so we can see numbers are actually on a somewhat upwards trend here, and the overall health of the game is looking rather fantastic if you ask me. All of this basically provides you a lot of backstory of Classic WoW and how the population has developed over time, which is very important when asking the question everyone wants the answer to: will Wrath be the end of the Classic WoW saga? I will be approaching this question with a rather objective point of view, looking at metrics, numbers and facts rather than portraying my own fantasy world of what I would want to happen. This way we can get a somewhat accurate answer to this question, and anyone that has been staying up to date with Blizzard's blue post and surveys already probably know where this is going. Cataclysm baby. Cataclysm Classic is basically confirmed at this point. I think we're all just waiting for an actual confirmation to come out at some point, so we know for sure. But at this point, Cataclysm Classic is basically just as confirmed as Wrath was when they decided to go into TBC. And to some of you, the Classic WoW trilogy, or the Classic WoW saga, might officially end with Wrath of the Lich King, and an argument I see here, or I see often at least, is that the Cataclysm reshaped Azeroth and altered zones and quest hubs, which is a fair argument to be fair, but that is more of a subjective point of view to have rather than an objective point of view. So, if we look at the facts, Blizzard has already, on 2 separate occasions, hinted towards Cataclysm Classic. Once they asked the community Cataclysm related questions by sending out different surveys. Different questions were sent out to different people, and these questions included what would you want to see the World of Warcraft Classic team do next, while heavily referring to what happens after Wrath Classic. They also said, we would like to get your feedback on features and systems introduced in the Cataclysm expansion. Also, they were asking how likely you would be to play the next Classic expansion, and mentioning features that were obviously from Cataclysm, referring to a list of changes that came with Cata, such as for example the raid finder, guild leveling system, AoE looting, and even specifically naming Cataclysm dungeons. So they are literally asking how likely you would be to play Cataclysm while talking about it as the next Classic expansion. Selecting which features you like the most and which you like the least from the Cataclysm expansion, and that was to help Blizzard understand what you liked and what you disliked, so they know what they might need to rework and or disable. It also really just makes sense for Blizzard from a logical point of view to bring Cataclysm out and keep this ride going, because for them it's very easy. They already have the game, they just need to make some small tweaks, and the potential profits are huge for them. TBC Classic and Wrath Classic both came out with deluxe editions, a new mount, and a paid level boost, and if Blizzard keeps this trend up, they can easily milk each player for between 50 and 100 bucks with any future Classic expansion. So if we say Classic has 1 million players, that is a very easy 50 to 100 million bucks for Blizzard, as well as any recurring revenue from monthly subscriptions. Now let's get into the argument of what will happen versus what should happen. I understand that quite a few people think the Classic WoW trilogy or saga ends for them at Wrath of the Lich King, and they want to stick in the vanilla WoW universe, and I personally think this is fair. That being said, I also know for a fact that quite a few people think both Cataclysm and Mist of Pandaria are fantastic expansions, and they would very much like to revisit them. I mean, we can see the demand for this through various Cataclysm and Mist of Pandaria servers, which has gained a lot of tractions in the recent years, and the simple fact is, it doesn't have to be one or the other. Blizzard can do both. They can give us Cataclysm, and after Cata, they can give us Mist of Pandaria, and somewhere in the middle here, they can decide to relaunch some Classic servers, where everyone starts at level 1, play through vanilla, then TBC, and then Wrath once again. It is all about timing, and at some point you start missing previous expansions. Like right now, we are playing Wrath Classic, and people are starting to miss vanilla again. If we go into Cataclysm, and maybe eventually Mist of Pandaria, people might start to miss Wrath again. For Blizzard, it's all about making sure to meet the demands of as many people as possible, but they also don't want to fall into the trap of releasing too many servers, as that will simply create too much chaos. So now that we have started moving from the objective point of view on what happens next, let's talk about my subjective point of view and what I think the timeline of Classic WoW will look like. First of all, Classic WoW will continue into Cataclysm and Mist of Pandaria after Cataclysm, and somewhere in the middle of Wrath of the Lich King, I want to say towards the end of Phase 2 or Phase 3, Blizzard decides to launch hardcore servers for the hardcore community. Next up, in the middle of Cataclysm, Blizzard will relaunch Classic WoW servers, starting with the vanilla WoW universe and progressing into TBC and Wrath, but stopping at Wrath. These servers will be marketed like the holy trilogy of Classic WoW, and because it will launch in the middle of Cataclysm, a lot of people want to go back to Azeroth like it was before the Sundering, and they want to give Classic WoW, quote, one last ride, to obtain everything they failed to achieve during the current version of Classic WoW. It will also be hyped up a little bit extra due to the fact that these pristine servers will actually be capped at Wrath of the Lich King, so once you achieve something cool in the Wrath universe, you keep it in that universe, and no future content will ever outperform it. And there you have it, folks. Please let me know what you think will happen, as well as what you want to happen for the future of Classic WoW in the comments section down below, and make sure to subscribe for future content, and give the video a big thumbs up for the allegory. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you again very soon.